Changing the balance of power through social platforms? Hi, I'm Tanya Hall with ZDNet, and we're here with Alec Ross, who is the author of Industries of the Future. He is a former advisor to Hillary Clinton, and he is currently running for governor of Maryland. Welcome, Alec.
Hey, how are you doing, Tanya?
Fantastic. So, you have a lot of knowledge about a lot of different things, industry and innovation related, but specifically right now you're running for the governor of Maryland. And so I thought we could talk a little bit about how digital transformation of politics has changed running for office. How has actually the internet played a role, maybe with apps, social media, technology, social in general, change things?
It's redistributed power. So power used to be in politics very top down, and everybody got their news from ABC, NBC, CBS, and then the newspaper they read in the morning. That was it. That is really what mattered. And part of what the changing news environment has done and the proliferation of digital tools is it has redistributed power from hierarchies to networks. So now you can see press outlets that didn't exist 5 years ago, 7 years ago, exerting an incredible amount of power. I don't think I'd ever heard of something like Breitbart in 2012, but it had a huge amount of influence in the 2016 election. So what it's done is sort of redistributed power in some really wild ways, in some consequential ways, both good and bad.
How has access to the internet changed the communication? Because you talk about the traditional, getting up in the morning, reading your newspaper, and finding out about the news of the previous day. Now you've got a president who goes straight to Twitter, bypasses the traditional media outlets and journalists to get his message across. Is this a positive thing for the future? Is this a way that as constituents we can feel more connected?
Well, it's good and bad. I mean, it is good in that it's great that we don't have to have filters. Some sort of hierarchical figure or journalistic institution determining what we get to hear. People can hear what they opt into. Where it's negative is where you have a population that is not prepared to deal with things like fake news. Where our civics fall short, where our citizenship falls short, is when you can tweet out something that's just complete garbage and false, and people absorb it. It doesn't get named and shamed. It gets believed. And so I think that the technology redistributes power for both good and ill. It's good in that it means you don't have to be one of 3 or 4 institutions or Walter Cronkite to be able to communicate with a huge number of people. It's bad when our civics comes up short and where people just don't know how to process the information intelligently or accurately.
So our president clearly knows how to use social media, but not all politicians are as socially savvy. And you talked a little bit about fake news. So how, as constituents, can we determine whether it's, somebody hacking the internet or finding out whether or not we're actually getting legitimate information from either constituents or media outlets?
So this is a case where you go back to your journalistic institutions, ZDNet, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post. It's great that that anybody can communicate, but what I think is really important is that our good old-fashioned journalism is sort of elevated in a way that it wasn't certainly in the 2016 election. And so I think what we can do is just be very careful about how we're curating our information, what information we're taking in. And so I do think in this world of, over 1 billion Facebook users, a couple 100 million Twitter users, I do still think in that world that good old-fashioned journalism matters more. But the difference now is that the way that you access the really good, credible, accurate journalism might be through digital tools.
How is government at the state and maybe local level trying to understand or utilizing technology, whether it's transforming within the city government or whether it's actually communicating to constituents?
So I think that a lot of city governments have done great in terms of citizen services. Getting your driver's license. I got my driver's license renewed a couple months ago, and that used to be a soul-crushing experience that required hours of standing in line at the Motor Vehicle Administration. It's like 7 minutes, because 95% of it I could do in person. I showed up, I had an appointment, I was in, I was out. And so I think that digital tools have been used fairly effectively for a lot of government services. Where it hasn't been, I think, used as effectively is to really improve the operations of sort of government, police, fire department, the non-consumer, non-constituent pieces of governing. I think we have a bunch of old legacy systems with really expensive software programs that aren't that efficient. We've got these multi-billion-dollar office of the chief technology officers that I think, are all closed when the world is going to more open forms of technology. And so I think it's been good in a lot of the constituent services, but in terms of core operations of the city itself, I think they oftentimes have lagged.
What can they do to change that? What would you suggest that at the local level specifically that they do to incorporate a better digital transformation?
Two things. Number one, get some 20-somethings into your technology departments. I think that, this is not, we shouldn't be using our parents' technology, and we shouldn't be using taxpayer dollars and buying with our parents' technology sensibilities. Let's get some of these young folks who are really comfortable with open source technologies, who know what GitHub is, and things like this. So that's thing one. Thing two is I think we cannot be making multi-year commitments for, lousy software. We should have technologists themselves determining what technology we use, and not sort of brokering these deals over state dinners with 5-year licensing programs. I think that we need to be moving increasingly toward open source platforms and more nimble, recognizing that the technology itself is going to turn over every 18 months or so.
How should the government, whether it's at the local or even a broader level, look at artificial intelligence specifically in gathering data and data mining?
We have to be really careful here. We have to be really careful. In Singapore, for example, they are using big data analytics to do fabulous things with AI on the back end of it, to make the trains run like you wouldn't imagine, like mass transit. It's just beautiful, down to the minute. You know where you're going. Like to the second what's going on. But I think we have to do that, but do so in a way that respects citizen privacy. What we don't want to do is trade convenience for the complete loss of privacy. In China, for example, right now, they are building a first ever social scorecard for all of its 1.4 billion citizens. And so literally you will have a score. And if you are at a protest, your score will go down. How do they know you're at the protest? Because of the facial recognition technology enabled by AI. So I think that we have to balance the need, the desire for convenience with, not creating a complete surveillance state. I think we can do that. I think that in East Asia, they have gone too far in not respecting privacy. And in Europe, I think they sometimes go too far, optimizing for privacy over convenience. I'm hoping that the United States can be a place where we get the balance just right.
Well, we're looking at people like you to help make that happen. And good luck with your campaign. If somebody wants to follow you, Alec, how can they go about doing that?
On Twitter at Alec J. Ross. They can go to my website, alecross.com, to learn more, or they can check me out on Facebook.
Well, thanks again for your advice. Like I said, good luck with the campaign.
Thank you, Tanya.
And I'm Tanya Hall. You can follow me and my interviews at ZDNet or Tech Republic, or find me on Twitter at Tanya Hall Radio, or Facebook by searching The Tanya Hall Show.